And hello again. So I'm going to show this will be like the first version of the form stuff. So I have a demo application here with some different kinds of forms. So I just wanted to show you how this looks and look at some code. So this is actual usage, so you get a better impression of how it works. So I have a simple form, and this is using like low-level code. We're going to look at that soon. And as you can see, I cannot click to see JSON here. Um, I have to enter a name. And as I enter that name, we see everything that's happening inside the module. And I'm not going to talk about this touch versus has value versus required. So I'll skip that. We'll just see if it works as expected. And foobar.com. And now I have a bunch of rules in here. I have taken the rules from Formc React and made them compatible with this module. So there's a bunch of them, like email and numeric and alphanumeric and all that good stuff. Okay, so only these two fields are required. So I can now click here to see JSON. So this is how it looks as expected. And if I enter something more here, and this postal code actually has some validation on it. So, okay, it needs a length of 4, but it also needs to be numbers. So I can do it like that, and then it opens up again. As you can see, it disables when it's, yeah. And I click again, and I get the new data. Awesome. Okay, so let's look at how this is built. First of all, this is my module, and this is like the form itself. So I just I bring in the form from Cerebral module forms, and I create a form. And as I said in the previous video, you have to use this form because you want to validate the initial state of the form. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying that name as an empty value and it's required. Email has an empty value, it's also required, but it also has some validations. So it has the is email validation and it will give this error message. I could also say is email true here. And that means that I can actually bring in multiple rules like is email true, is length uh, or min length, oops, 4 and max length 20, for example. And I could use, let's remove this one, like that. So that means this error message will occur when all these rules apply, which is pretty cool. But let's put it back. Okay, and then we have a namespace here. I just insert address as expected, and then I put a form on the address where we have a street field and we have a postal code field where I have um, two different validations with two different messages. As I said, I could actually merge these into one message, just saying invalid postal code. But you get the idea here. And then I have form submitted, which just logs out. I'm just grabbing the state and I'm using a to.json helper from the library, which will extract the values as expected. Okay, cool. And then we have the component itself. And this component just extracts the simple state, which is the form, and we also get the signals. And then we use a helper to check if the form is valid. And it actually checks both the required and the actual validation errors. So this variable here will tell us if it's valid. And then we have low-level code. So we have a normal input. We bring in the value from the name field. We trigger a signal on the actual forms module called field changed. We tell it which field has changed and what value it has changed to. And it will automatically do all the validation and and all that cool stuff. And then we have an email which basically does the same, though it also checks if the email has been touched, and if it has been touched, it will display an error if there is an error there. And address, no biggie here, it's the same concept. Like that, and then we have the button down here. Okay, nice. So let's jump to the next one. Here we have a contract form. So we can say hey, and as soon as we agree, we can click the JSON and we get the name and agreed true. So there's nothing special about the form, but we can see that it has been abstracted a bit. So let's look at the form itself here. So we bring in the contract form and we have the name, and we're using input from the module. So we have input and we just point to the field. So we don't have to do anything about the value or the onChanged listener. This just works. So it's really nice syntax. Like that. And then again, we have this click button. Nothing special about that. And then we can move down to something a bit more exciting. So here we have a list form. And it's dynamic. So first of all, I need to insert a name. And currently it states that it's valid. So if I click, we see the name and items here. But when I click add now, suddenly I get 2 new required fields. So now I can't click it anymore. I have to add something here. And we have validations and all that. And I can click to see the new data. And if I add again, we can see that I can't click anymore. But if I remove it, then I can click again. So yeah, so that's dynamic forms. And now these dynamic forms are in a list, but they could also be like a normal single field. No worries. So let's check out that one, list, list, how this looks. So initially, I just have an empty array, and I have a normal field up here. And in the component, I just bring in the form. And let's go down here first. So here is the field as expected. And the list has a button. So when I click the button, it will run an onAdd method. So let's check that out. And what this button does is also trigger a forms signal. So it points to forms and says form added. So you can nest forms. I didn't mention that, sorry. I should have mentioned that on simple here. As we can see here, I'm nesting a form. So you can have forms inside forms inside forms, no worries. Okay, so I'm actually adding a form and I'm telling it which path I want to add that form. And then I give the form details. Maybe I should call it form fields. Anyways, these are the fields and they are just added as normal. And when it's added, it will of course render again. And as we can see here, we iterate over the items in the map. So if we check out the render item method, we render the item itself. Oh, I forgot to insert some styles here. Okay, no worries. Let's remove that. Or maybe, okay, let's do it. Bottom border 1 pixel solid. Okay, like that. That's nice. So here we have the name which is required, and we're just using the normal input stuff again, though we are pointing to the list, items, the index of this form, and then the name, the field. So you just do it the same way. And again, we are checking if it's touched and displaying errors on the email here. And when I want to remove a field or a form, sorry, I can use the form removed, and then I just give it the path, and it will remove it. And it's the same for fields. So you can say field added and field removed if you want to do that. So we could actually, on the list here, we could actually remove a single a single field or add an extra field to. It's crazy. You can do whatever you want. Okay. And then we have the last one here, which is a completely custom one because it's asynchronous. So that means that when I type something, it does run the validation if I had some validation there, but I'm actually preventing it. You see it says, oops, what happened? Ooh. Oh, sorry, now I blur it. Oh, typical. Okay, again. So you can see here, I have prevent validation true, so it won't actually run any validation. It will just keep the is valid property as is. So I say, okay, so now I actually did a validation. So if I blur again, it will check, and now it's a valid username, and I can actually submit. When I submit, I get the username there. If I blur again, it will say it's not valid, and it disables the submit button again. Okay, so let's take a quick look at how that works. So here we are rendering a username. We're using the input. We are pointing to the field because we do want to synchronize the field with the input. But we are giving our own blur event here, or event listener, which fires off a custom signal on the async module. And then we are saying that when the username is validating, we disable the input, and we say that it should not validate. And then we render a username message, which just checks the state of that field. And these are just custom properties. I just added these properties because I want to use it this way. So there's really nothing more to it, but let's check the module itself. Here it is. It's a form with a username and no value. And I just added two properties there, which I'm going to use. And I use these in the username input blurred signal, which just set validating username. Then it checks the username on the server. And if it's a success, it sets the valid username. And if it's an error, it sets the invalid username. And these actions just dive into the form in the state store and just does whatever it wants to it. So this is what I think is so great. We don't hide anything. It's just namespaced inside the tree, and you can do whatever you want to the values. So you can solve any kind of situation or scenario. But you have these abstractions that helps you solve the common scenarios. And as I talked about in the previous video, we can go even further here. So like this input, now we have to manually do the error handling, displaying the error messages, but this could be abstracted one more level. So we didn't even have to do that. It would automatically display the error messages. So what you end up doing is just inserting a component pointing to a field. And then it's the field. This is where you actually do all the stuff, like setting its value, validation rules, and whatnot. And I think that's really, really powerful. It's certainly a lot different from how we normally think about forms, but I've been playing around with this now, and it's freaking awesome. Okay, thanks for listening, and yeah, talk to you later.